All right, so I want to respect everyone's time today. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for being here. My name is Madison Pollock, and I am an MTSS specialist on the State Personnel Development Grant, which is the grant that brings to you the OKMTSS Community of Practice. We have been doing these monthly, so if you've missed them in the past, I see a lot of new faces and names today, which is awesome. We love that. But if you want to go back and check out previous sessions, those are available on our OSDE Connect Canvas course. And I'll put that link to that in the chat. So welcome, everyone. We are super excited to have you here. We are also super excited to have Sharon Morgan, who is the program director in the Office of Standards and Learning. I'm not sure if it's an office. Names have got moved around a lot of what different offices are called. So I'll let her share a little bit more about herself and her role. But we are super, super excited to have her here to talk about some awesome standards and how that, some resources that they have out of their office and how that can be incorporated into your MTSS, your multi-tiered system of supports. So Sharon, do you want to go ahead and I will stop sharing my screen. Oh, also, if you have questions during the presentation, go ahead and put them in the chat, and then there will be a time where she can look through those questions. We can answer those at the very end.
Okay, absolutely, Madison, and thank you so much for inviting us. I'll tell you a little bit about myself, and then my colleague Jason Stevenson, who's also on the call with us too. And we're going to try to give an overview of standards and frameworks and some of the resources we have. But I am Sharon Morgan. I am the program director, and it is the Office of Standards and Learning. It's the office that houses all the content areas that have standards, and then a few other projects related to instruction. We think of our office as kind of the tier one instructional, all the content areas. Prior to this position, I was a classroom teacher for 18 years in Oklahoma City, Putnam City, and Piedmont, where we live. I was the elementary English language arts coordinator for Oklahoma City Public Schools. And I've been at the State Department, not consecutively, but about 5.5 years now. I've worked as director of early childhood with our Striving Readers Comprehensive Literacy Grants, elementary English language arts, and then just in the last month, I've taken this role as program director of standards and learning. So I am going to also toss it to Jason Stevenson, who is our program manager for secondary education in our office.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us. Before I came to the State Department, I was a high school English teacher and taught in Deer Creek Public Schools for 13 years total, 2 years at the middle school level, which was enough to last a lifetime for me personally, and then 11 years at the high school. And then I've been here at the State Department for about 5.5 years as well, just like Sharon. We'll be talking about the English language arts and mathematics standards and their supporting websites of resources that our office creates in partnership with educators from around the state called the frameworks. You might be familiar with these already, but throughout our years presenting professional development for teachers, we continually find educators around the state who say, I wish I had known about this framework a year ago, 3 years ago. They house some really great information. So I have a PowerPoint. Sharon, were you wanting us to start right away with an overview of the English language arts framework, or exactly how are we beginning?
I think so. I think I might even want in the chat, because I will say Jason and I are really more we generally talk with more general education teachers, and I know that this audience is more special education teachers. So could everybody make just a statement in the comments about do you feel like you're familiar with the standards? Is there anything you would like us to specifically address today? Maybe just give 2 or 3 minutes to get your thoughts so we can make sure to cover what you need. So just in the chat, how familiar are you with our state standards for ELA and math? And have you ever heard of the framework or used it? Just give us, I'll just put my timer for a couple minutes.
She'll keep me on. Yes. Spindle Top Hill. You have another meeting?
Yes, I have two today.
Looks like we have a little bit of a range from somewhat familiar. Looks like we might be more familiar with the standards, some not as much with the frameworks. Have used the frameworks in the past. Okay, go ahead and keep being in the chat. But Jason, do you want to go ahead and bring up the ELA standards and framework and we can look at that first?
Sure. Do the actual framework page or
Okay, I
that
think whichever
PowerPoint?
one. You can do the PowerPoint or let everybody look. See.
Okay, I'll share my screen.
I'm going to put this link in the chat.
The ELA standards were last revised in the year of the pandemic in 2020, and then they were passed by our state board in spring of 2021, and the legislature formally approved them, and so they went into Oklahoma Administrative Code. Now, they have not been fully tested on the OSTP yet. There was such a change in content that our testing vendor Cognia needed more time to create more items. And the main source of that new content was in one of the 8 overarching standards. Here they are on the screen. For those of you that are very familiar with the standards, you might be able to guess. You could even put your guess in the chat before I reveal that nugget of information. Which of these 8 overarching standards do you think or do you know changed the most from the 2016 version of the standards to 2021? Any guesses or any confident, I know it? And you can come off mic or you can put your answer in the chat. But do you know which of these standards changed the most in that revision? Well, the answer is standard 5, language. There was a lack of specific language skills in the 2016 standards, and the feedback we got from educators around the state was that needed to be expanded, and it was. So this year, 2024, is going to be the first year that the OSTP for English Language Arts will be fully aligned to the new version of the standards, the 2021 version. So each one of these overarching standards is divided into 2 strands, listening and speaking. I think that's pretty self-explanatory that there's a listening strand of skills or objectives, and then a speaking strand. And then all the rest of the overarching standards are divided into a reading strand and a writing strand. And the standards that are assessed on the OSTP range from standards 2 through standard 6. So standard 1, standard 7, and standard 8, they do not appear on the OSTP, but all of these are deemed important by the standards writers. So I don't think we're going to do this activity with you all today since we're limited on time and we also need to talk about math. But this would be a link directly to the standards document, and let's put that in the chat for you in case you want to pull it up. It's going to be gigantic, so can't miss it. And now that you've got a little more specificity about those 8 overarching standards, Sharon already asked you all if you were familiar or confident with the standards for ELA, but as far as the specific 8 overarching, is there one that you need support with right now that we could explain in more detail or elaborate on, point you to some resources? If not, we'll move along to talking about the fact that the science of reading was emphasized more in the new version of the standards. Objectives were added to fill some gaps to make sure that there were explicit and sequential instruction of essential reading skills. And there was a spelling and encoding strand added in those elementary grades. Some examples include these phonemic awareness additions, like the ability in 2nd grade to add a TH sound to the beginning of rowing to make the word throwing, and in 3rd grade to reverse the initial and final sounds in safe to say face. The mechanics rules, those language skills that I mentioned earlier, now have been delineated by grade, by punctuation mark. There's some standard American English that's included now. And here's an example in grade 6 from the former version, which was extremely broad, no specific rule stated. And then in 2021, this is just one example of a skill regarding quotation marks. And there are other objectives for those other punctuation marks listed in that former objective. We're just going to breeze through here. There are implementation documents for the ELA standards, including a crosswalk from the old standards to the new, vertical progressions that articulate the standards side by side with other grades, if you'd rather look at them that way with colleagues. We do have an appendix that provides supplemental information. And then there are slideshows and videos of past PD that we have delivered on these standards. This is just one example of a resource from the appendix. And if we wanted to, we could take a little time to click around in the appendix. I'll grab the link right here. And put that in the chat in case you'd like to pull that up. But I think that's about it as far as the standards themselves. Next, we were going to go over the ELA framework, give you some orientation to that. There are some new resources as of this past year that have been added to it. So if you've not visited it in a while, there are some very helpful resources. And then as far as the crosswalk, here's what I'm going to do for you for any other resources you want regarding the standards. If you go to the ELA standards page from our OSDE website and scroll down, there's an entire series of implementation resources. I'll zoom in real quick and you'll see all the crosswalks, the vertical progressions, a glossary, the appendix, and then those training videos that we mentioned. The landing pages will take you to even more documents, including a slideshow. Okay, so I think we want to go into more information about our framework, unless were there any other questions about the ELA standards? Okay. So our ELA framework website, this is our homepage, resource created by Oklahoma teachers for Oklahoma teachers. You can always grab our standards webpage or our standards document by clicking on the image of our cover of our standards. And then in the upper right-hand corner of the homepage is where you can find an appendix that we mentioned earlier, some standard short videos. And the appendix is also available in kind of a separated digital format. You can navigate to any of our resources in two different ways. In the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see that they're organized by grade. And then in that middle section, you can also find the resources by topic. So every grade is going to have an objective analysis, literacy progressions, proficiency levels, UDL, Universal Design for Learning, writing resources, and then engagement strategies have been developed by grade band. And then there's some other resources that teachers have found helpful in the past that we have linked off to the side. And as an example, we're going to look at 5th grade. And the introduction to the little 5th grade page describes the expectations of what a student should know and be able to do in 5th grade. And then all those resources I just mentioned are collected there for grade 5 English language arts. So we're going to look at an example of objective analysis. This is one for 2nd grade, 22R2. Students will identify elements in various genres in fiction and nonfiction texts. Every objective analysis page at the elementary level includes student actions, teacher actions that fulfill the objective, along with recommendations if students are struggling with that objective, and then key terms and related objectives. The key terms are specific terms called out within the objective itself or heavily implied. And then the related objectives would naturally be taught in conjunction with this objective as well, because we know that our ELA standards are better taught together instead of in isolation. So that work's been done. At the high school level, we also have additional boxes of connections to ACT standards and SAT standards. So in preparing our high school students for those tests, we can see any correlations from our state standards to these national test standards. Any questions on the objective analysis? Okay, the literacy progressions are 24 literacy skills that develop throughout a student's career. The way these pages work, it groups together the objective in one column and then commentary and on classroom implications on the right column. So there's a number of different topics. The one that we're going to look at real quick is summarizing. The page is overwhelming maybe when it's so small, so we're going to zoom in. Here's the objectives for summary collected from kindergarten through 5th grade, and then the progression is the commentary created by Oklahoma teachers on the right. So that's what a literacy progression looks like. It can be really helpful in kind of seeing where your students' skills are, where they're coming from, and where they're going. Proficiency levels. These are the student skills worded at different levels of understanding. The understanding level that's in red, that's the actual objective language from the standards. But then we have an extending level that goes above, and then approaching would be almost, but not quite to the understanding level, and then developing would need a lot of support. There are a number of schools that expect teachers to be able to develop this kind of language, and it's already created for them for every single objective within the standards. And here's an example from grade 5, and we're going to look at this very first one, 5.2R1. The actual objective at the understanding level says students will explain how key supporting details support the main idea of a text. And then I don't need to read the other 3 to you, but you can look as an example right now how that wording changes for those different levels. And this can help our students find success initially and then build toward mastery, or even extend it if they are gifted and talented. And again, the understanding language is the language from the standard itself. That was not an easy process, creating all that content for every single objective at every grade level. So if you find it helpful and you kind of forgot about it or didn't know about it, we hope you'll use it and share it with colleagues. Universal design for learning is a way for teachers to ensure that all their students have access to learning experiences and promotes participation, and the resources we created for UDL exist as an overarching page that's organized by the national standard matrix of engagement, representation, action, and expression, and then access, build, and internalize, and then those cross multiply, and you see those 9 different boxes. So there's an overarching guidance page for what UDL would look like in an ELA classroom. And then every single grade has an example lesson with all 9 UDL lenses. Here, we're looking at engagement and access, which leads us to recruiting interest. And so here's just general guidelines that would be helpful to incorporate into any English language arts classroom, no matter the grade level. The writing resources, I'm super excited about these. These are some of the new resources that were added within the past year. The writing resources come in 4 different buckets. There are student-friendly checklists for the major modes of writing: narrative, informative, opinion, and argumentative, and then research as well. And you see which grades those are available for there. Here's an example of a student-friendly revision checklist for grade 2. It's got the helpful icons, a little yes, no, and students can use this to help them make sure that they've included the important elements in their writing. And then at the higher level, it's more of a checkbox, but they can be personalized with those little light bluish gray boxes that you see there. And the editing checklists are somewhat similar, but that's to check for all of those language skills and expectations. They exist in 2 different formats, one for the beginning of the year, which is based on the objectives learned in past school years. And then the middle of the year checklist is for the current grade. Those skills have been folded in. So a student who's starting 7th grade should not be expected to know the 7th grade skills. So a teacher would use beginning of the year checklist in August, September, October, maybe. And then by the time the teacher has taught all of the objectives about standard 5 language, then they could start using the middle of the year checklist with students. Here is a 1st grade example, which some of you who work with middle school or high school, you might think, you know what, my students need this one right now with how they're employing their grammar skills. But we do have them for 5th grade, 10th grade, for all the grades, but there's just a quick example here. And then there are examples of teachers providing feedback on student writing with margin comments, an audio recording and a screen recording and a conference video. That could be really helpful for teachers to examine these together and look at the kinds of beneficial teacher feedback on writing. And then there's also a peer feedback lesson, which includes a lesson plan, a slideshow, and a handout. And this is just an example of a 3rd through 5th grade handout, and then the middle school PowerPoint. Then there are engagement strategies. Here's one for high school. These are being revised currently, and some have already been revised in our current round of standards revision, or a framework revision. So we want to give you time to explore the ELA framework. And it can be somewhat overwhelming because there's a lot of resources, but the link is in the chat, and we want to give you some time to poke around, see what you can find, see what looks helpful, see what excites you, see what maybe takes some stress off your shoulders because it's already here in the framework. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Hold on, Jason. Oh, I was going to say, can you keep it up for just a minute? I was going to highlight a few things. So I'm thinking maybe we just give you all, I know you don't have very much time, you know, in your day. So we thought we'd give you about 5 minutes just to look through this and see what might be most helpful to your work.
I can
What
share
I
the
think,
screen again, Sharon.
okay, yeah,
Would
go
you
ahead
like me
and
to?
if you put that back up. Just thinking of from your lens as special education, I know it's about making goals for specific students and, knowing how we build up to the grade level objectives. So some things I might point out, of course, going to the objective analysis once you've identified through testing that student is, struggling with this standard objective for the grade level. There are recommendations within each one. If you click on that, for if you're struggling with that part of the objective, so that could be helpful for instruction for specific students. The literacy progressions show how a skill progresses from pre-K through 12th grade. So if you notice, you want a student here at this 3rd grade level, you can kind of see where they might be in that progression so they can build up to grade level standards. And then of course the proficiency levels, if you're making a goal, that can help you figure out, where where the student might be and how we build up. So I just wanted to highlight those as places I think may be helpful in your roles. But other than that, let's just give you about 5 minutes to look at all these links and things, and maybe at the end of that, just share either in the chat or open up your mic and just what pieces did you find that would be helpful to your roles. So I'm just gonna, and then we'll go on to math. Go ahead.
Let's make it a goal that when our 5 minutes is up, everyone at that point, not until then, we'll give you a little countdown. You will share the website from this framework that you find most helpful. So it will just be like a little flood of all these different links to the page that you've decided is most helpful for you today. So be looking for that and what you'll be sharing out in the chat.
Okay, I'm going to set my timer for about 5 minutes and then we'll share out. Okay, let's go ahead and start. There's 5 minutes. Let's go ahead and start sharing the links that we found most helpful.
And I'm hoping some of you would be willing to turn your camera on, unmute yourself, and talk about why you picked the one that you did. And Emily and Dion, you're my first targets because your cameras are already on. So would either one of you be willing to get us started, please?
I'll go, yeah. I really like the Universal Design for Learning lens, that graphic, just as I'm teaching educators how to really differentiate instruction. This is a great tool, and then to really narrow it down by grade level. I love it. It's a great resource.
Yay!
Yeah.
Great. I do something called productive procrastination. Sometimes at work, when I can't tackle a bigger project, I become obsessed with something small. And what your just reference was one of my productive procrastination things, which was adding all those little icons to that overarching page. So that was something I did a month or two ago, just because. So I'm glad you find it helpful. All right. Thanks, Emily. Dion, could you share too, please?
Yes, I chose the engagement portion. We have several new teachers within our district who often need assistance and help in keeping the class engaged. So the strategies that I saw in the engagement portion will be helpful for them.
Fantastic. These are all newly updated as part of our current work with teachers around the state who are updating our website. Those old engagement strategies, or the previous version, they were good, but a few of them were dated. Some of them now cost money, and we only wanted to share strategies that were free resources to various websites. And then we also wanted to add some images to make the page itself a little more engaging. So you'll see that there for any of the grade bands that you all chose. Thank you, Dion. Would anyone else be willing to share?
So I had
Why
noticed
did you-
several people put in links for the progressions. Does anyone want to share how they felt like the progressions could help your work?
That would be Angela Streeter who posted that. Amy Kitchens and Brenda Dalton.
Brenda.
Any of you three?
I don't care to go. I liked it from an IEP point of view also because you can look at the standard, and if a child's off grade level, you can just look down through there and pick where they're at, but it's still the same standard. And that helps the special ed teacher kind of know how to start and then build up.
Great. Thank you, Brenda.
I also noticed that several people put in the family guides, which we didn't even talk about that much, but you must have found. Does anyone want to share how they might use the family guides?
Do we have those linked from the homepage?
I think we do, because they're in the
okay.
chat. So there are, I think Melissa, I thought I saw them twice on there. That's in, anybody want to share how you might use those family guides? Let's see.
I don't mind to share.
Okay.
I really liked them. I just found them for some of the lower grades, maybe to start out sharing with parents at parent-teacher conferences or at IEP meetings. I liked what it looks like, what to expect, what they're going to learn this year, and then the questions that it gave at the end, specifically on what to ask your child when they're reading. I thought that was helpful. I have a lot of parents who want to engage with their children. They just don't know what questions or how to do it. And this was a pretty simple way to provide them guidance on that.
Okay, and I did put that, I put the link in for all of the family guides. We do have them through, I think, 6th grade, right? 6th
I
grade.
think so.
They are in English and Spanish, and we have them for all the content areas. And you can download them by individual content areas, or you can do the full grade level of all the content areas on this page that I just put in there.
Okay, Sharon, we've got 22 minutes
you're
to
right.
cover math, so
Okay,
shall
and I
we
will
move
tell you, this
on?
is not quite as much our area of expertise. At our math guru is out of the office at a training today. Let me see. Give me just a minute. Okay, are you seeing the mathematical actions and processes? Okay, so I'm going to give you, here are the math standards. And these were revised in 2022. And like the ELA standards, this OSTP testing period will be the first time that the 2022 standards are tested. So coming up in our testing season, both the revised ELA standards and the revised math standards will be tested. I do like to point out the mathematical actions and processes. We do want to look at the objectives, but we want to make sure that all of these ideas are flowing throughout all of our math instruction, that students develop this deep and flexible conceptual understanding, procedural fluency, problem solving, mathematical reasoning, productive mathematical disposition, which I think is important because it's not ever a subject that I felt very confident about, but students need to know that it's important and that they can do it, their ability to make conjectures, model, and generalize, and communicate mathematically. So hopefully in math, just as with any other subject, we're talking, we're justifying our ideas, talking about our problem solving. And then going down, just here are the, you can see that the math actions and processes go across the top because we want those involved with all parts of math instruction. But there are 4 strands: the numbers and operations, algebraic reasoning, geometry and measurement, and data and probability, and all of those. And then I am going to go ahead and go to the framework. We'll probably give you a few minutes as well, and I'll put the math framework in the chat too. Okay, and you can see some resources here on the side as well. And here is see where the update is. Here's a crosswalk document, but I'm just going to go, I'll just go to 3rd grade. And when you go to each grade level, you'll notice that there's a description of the math actions and processes for each grade level. How do those ideas apply to that grade level? They do have a suggested learning progression. You may also have curriculum resources, but this might be something that you use if in a special education classroom you don't have curriculum resources. And then here's our 2022 objective analysis. So let's see. So I'm in 3rd grade. We might pick multiplication facts. Here are the student actions. So those are breakdowns. You might, I guess I think of that as, if you're developing student goals, that might be helpful. Here's the teacher actions, or what the teacher can be doing. Some different key understandings. Those might be helpful if you're creating goals. Are there some key understandings that they're missing that is making it difficult to meet this grade level objective? Some common misconceptions. These are some things that students might get confused related to this mathematical knowledge. And then some prior knowledge. So that might also be, if we are not getting it, what are some prior knowledge areas that the student might need to make it to that objective? And then what does it lead to? Like what are the next steps there? Let's see, I'm going to go back up to the top. Here you can also get the Oklahoma Academic Standards. Let's see, there is a math website. And if you want to do assessment resources, there they are. So I know we are kind of getting low on time. There's an overview. So let's go ahead and just give a a few minutes for you all to look at some of those resources. And just like with the ELA, what are some areas that you feel like would be helpful for your work? And we'll put those in the chat.
Sharon, do we need to share screen still?
I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Nope, don't. Okay, another minute or so, and we'll have another discussion about what you felt like was helpful. lost the link. Hold on. There we go. Okay. And I am noting what you're saying. It does look like we have a few links that we need to change. I think everything that was in the OK Math Toolkit is now in the frameworks. It was just a different way to display the information. So can you put in the chat or go ahead and open up? I know we just, we're kind of down to the end here. Is there anything in here that you found that would be helpful to your work?
I will say something that math has that ELA does not for various reasons is entire units built out for each grade. I think Sharon mentioned this already, but it's those suggested learning progressions. So let's take a look at one really quick. Being a bit bigger. So we're in third grade still. So that suggested learning progression, this first page that we're looking at shows overarching questions, essential questions, the big ideas, and then the objectives connected within that unit. But as you scroll down, what you have to know to do is click on the unit you want to explore. So we're going to look at equal partitioning, unit 3. So when we click on that, this gives us not only the driving question, essential questions, big ideas, but we get to find out what are all the tech resources that would be needed to launch this unit. We see renting Mr. Jackson's storage spaces is the launch task. And then we see that question that launches the unit. And then throughout this page, we're going to see all the different resources. Lots of these are going to be linked to additional resources. So for schools that maybe don't have the newest textbook or need something to supplement, the whole unit is built out for you. Pretty handy, pretty helpful.
And I will tell you, we don't do that in ELA because per RSA law, schools have to have a evidence-based curriculum, and we don't want to do anything that would contradict or cause confusion by putting our own units in when you already have to have a curriculum. So that's one reason we don't do that in ELA.
Anything else?
Yeah, I was gonna say, any pieces of these you all found would be helpful?
Well, Sharon, not that it's a competition, but you and I have both contributed hours upon hours to the ELA framework. So we're pleased that you all had a number of resources from ELA that you found helpful. We've got 7 minutes left. Sharon, do we have anything else? And then is there anything else from our host, Madison, to wrap things up for us?
I was going to put the Standards and Learning website in there.
Great.
Let's see, and I might share just a minute.
And we might also say there are frameworks for additional subject areas. So science, social studies, fine arts, and personal financial literacy. All of those are linked in the menu on the right-hand side of the ELA and math frameworks. You can jump to them from there.
And if you go, and hopefully I'm sharing this Standards and Learning website. So this might be a one-stop shop. So if you, here's an introduction, but here's this academic standards for all subject areas. So if you go to this one, it will give you all the subject areas and the related assessments, state assessments. Here's the curriculum frameworks for all subject areas. I mean, you can get to this in a few different ways from the content area pages. There it is. Here's the family guides that I shared. Here's our adoption and selection. Let's see. And then here are the websites and contact information for everyone who is in charge of each of the different content areas. So this is, I think, a really good page to maybe bookmark so you can find your standards, the family guides, the frameworks, all of your content people right there. So I did want to make sure that you had that as well. But yes, and then we're here to answer any other questions, or Madison, whatever you need to do to wrap us up.
Yeah. So thank you guys so much. This information was so helpful. I'm super excited for schools to have this and start utilizing this resource. That's amazing. And I can imagine that was a lot of work to put all that together. So thank you guys so much for that. If you guys have any questions, feel free to unmute or put them in the chat. I do want to call attention to, before you log off today, if you wouldn't mind filling out just 2 quick questions that we have. We had a lot of new faces today, which we love, but we want to know what we've done right to get all of you here. And then if you wouldn't mind filling out that session evaluation as well. And I guess in our last 4 minutes, Dr. Duhan, do you have any questions, comments, anything to add? Well, if you don't have any questions for us today, you're welcome to log off. Thank you all for attending. The recording of this session will be on the OSC Connect Canvas course that Benjamin linked earlier. So if you want to reference back to anything, you can access that. And thank you all so much for being here today.